Biang, we are now live on YouTube. You can share it with Malai Sohmat.
Okay, then yeah, sure.
I think user one is Mamo. Is that you?
No, user one is a panelist, no?
Yeah, because she just messaged saying that I can hear you. Oh, no, no. Oh, right, sorry.
You still can't see me, right?
No, Lanso.
Sorry, Lanso, not as yet.
I'm struggling.
We're just glad that you could join us.
Okay, all right.
You can keep trying in case it happens by the time, yeah.
Okay, I think I'll phone you.
All the attendees who have come, thank you so much for joining. We'll just start in 5 minutes or so. Lanso, we can now see you. So where are you now?
I am at a village called Old Ari. That's where the Falcons have shifted actually this year, away from Pangti. It's about 4 kilometers aerial distance. So we're just watching the falcons here, this new place. Very exciting.
It's incredible to see you, Lanso, in a tent attending this webinar.
It's quite fun, actually. I wish you guys could join next time.
I've sent out.
Has Batingchan managed to join?
Not yet. I think he might. This user one might be him. I'll just find out again.
Hello, Batingchan. Batingchan, you're muted. Can you just...
No. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
We can hear you and see you. Hello, Batingchan.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good to see you here. Thanks for joining.
Oh, okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, Batingchan.
Hello, Pak Biang Pi. Kalau mentah.
Hi. That's Shai.
Okay. Ashay.
Hi.
Okay, ta.
I'm not sure who user one is, Divya.
Không nói bạn Thiên Xanh.
That's okay. To the attendees, we're just waiting for a couple of more panelists to join us. So if you could just be patient.
इस सेंटर में है, इसे दबाएंगे ठीक है तो फिर कैमरा आ जाएगा जी इसे दबाते ही कैमरा बाहर आ जाएगा फोन लेने ठीक है just shut that door for me because it will get too loud otherwise.
Hello, Agatha, can you hear us? Hi, Agatha. Thanks for coming. Can you hear us?
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear us? Thank you
I
for
can
joining
hear you.
us. Okay,
I can
that's
hear you.
fantastic. That's fantastic. Then, Biang, do you like to start?
Is my camera on yet? I'm not sure.
Not as
Not-
yet.
Oh, not as yet.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can see you now.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I think we can begin now.
Yes, I guess with that we can start the webinar. So hello and a good evening to everyone, and welcome to this program. I hope everyone can hear me fine. I'm Biang Ranam's Aim, and I'll be your moderator this evening. And moderating alongside me is Dr. Varun Goswami, who is the founder and senior scientist of Conservation Initiatives. Before we begin and move ahead with the program, I'd like to give a brief introduction about our organization for those of you who are not familiar. So we are Conservation Initiatives, and we are a wildlife conservation organization that is based in Shillong and in Guwahati in Northeast India. And currently we're working across 3 states in Northeast India. And we work on endangered species such as the Asian elephant and the Western hoolock gibbon, as well as other animal communities. So in practicing conservation, we believe in a science-based and an inclusive and a participatory approach when working towards conservation goals. So that's a bit about us. I welcome you all again to this evening's film screening of the Khasi and English documentary Haba, Hylla, Huleng, or The Call of the Gibbon, and the panel discussion on community-based conservation in Meghalaya and in Northeast India. We have with us an exciting set of speakers from different fields in conservation, and I welcome all the panelists, a warm welcome to all of you, and we all look forward to hearing your different perspectives and your different thoughts on conservation. We are honored to have with us our Honorable Member of Parliament, Ma'am Agatha Sangma, as one of our panelists. Thank you, ma'am, for joining and being with us here today. And also a very warm welcome to people tuning in from Hima Malai Sohmat in Meghalaya. Our film this evening showcases the community-based conservation work at Hima Malai Sohmat. And this work, this initiative is by the people itself, and they have taken conservation efforts forward. And for this, they have received both local and national recognition. We are happy to have with us here today Mr. Tingshan Dokhat from Malai Sohmat, who has been spearheading the conservation efforts there. We also want a warm welcome also for the people tuning in all the way from Fakim village in Nagaland. We have with us here Mr. Chuseki Yimchunga, and he has been leading the conservation efforts in Fakim village in Nagaland. So without further ado, let's move on with the program. We will first have a round of introductory talks, and that will be followed by the film screening. And after that, our panelists will share their thoughts and perspectives on conservation. Towards the end of the program, we'll have a question and answer round with the audience. And for those of you in Zoom, there is a question and answer box which is open throughout the program. So please feel free to enter your questions into that question answer box. And if possible, also the person you're directing the question to. For those of you tuning in from Instagram and YouTube, there are comment sections there as well. And so if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments or the chat section, and we'll also try and get at those questions. First up in this program, we have Dr. Divya Vasudev, who is the co-founder and a senior scientist here at Conservation Initiatives. And Dr. Vasudev will be telling us a bit more about this incredible animal that we're here to see the film about, the Western hoolock gibbon. And Dr. Vasudev had studied these amazing animals in the Garo Hills for her PhD work. Over to you, Divya.
Thanks, Biang. Just a second. So the Northeast is special for reasons that we probably don't appreciate as much. Is that the Northeast is home to India's only ape, the Western hoolock gibbon. So Africa has its gorillas and chimpanzees. Southeast Asia has orangutans and some other species of gibbons. And India has the Western hoolock gibbon. And in India, the only place where the Western hoolock gibbon is found is in Northeast India. Like any other ape, Western hoolock gibbons are intelligent, have a lot of character. And it's no wonder, I guess, that cultures and tribes across Northeast India have a large number of stories, many folk tales that provide links between people and this ape. So that's not the only reason why they're so special. Every morning, hoolock gibbon couples, that's the adult male and the adult female, sing or have a duet that they call out in the forest. And this is what it sounds like. And these songs are so complex and so coordinated that some scientists believe that we can learn something about the origin of our own music by listening to their song. So it's no wonder that species like the Western hoolock gibbon has captured our imagination and has fascinated us. And we especially work to spread knowledge and awareness of this pretty amazing species, and particularly with young children, today being Children's Day, and a warm welcome to the children who are there on our webinar or tuning in on YouTube. But the Western hoolock gibbon is also facing a lot of threat for a couple of main reasons. One is that this is a slow growing species. And so even a little bit of additional pressure, additional mortality causes severe declines in their population. So causes them to find it very difficult to survive. In addition, they are very much specialized to forests, to closed canopy forests. And hence, as we lose forests, we lose gibbons. This assumes special importance to the conservation.
I think you've lost.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
So this basically means that the conservation of gibbons is equal to the conservation of forests. And that then takes on a whole new dimension, because as we now know and are increasingly recognizing, forests have a lot of, basically the conservation of forests means a lot to the well-being of people across the world. In India alone, hundreds of millions of people are dependent on forests for their basic lives, their lives and their livelihoods, as well as their well-being. And the loss of natural ecosystems is causing impacts, negative impacts on us that we are feeling across the globe. And probably the most tangible of that is in terms of water stress. Across India, for instance, half of the population in India faces high water stress. That's 1 in 2 Indians. Meghalaya, for instance, is home to places that have the highest rainfall across the world, but also faces high water stress. So clearly, going forward, we need to conserve forests, we need to conserve natural ecosystems and the species like the Western hoolock gibbon that are present in these forests. And so basically, the future of human well-being depends on the future of our forests, which can be seen in the future of gibbons. Thank you.
Thank you, Divyang. With that, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our inaugural speaker, Ms. Agatha Sangma, Honorable Member of Parliament at the Lok Sabha. Ms. Sangma hardly requires an introduction, but I would like this opportunity to say she is a great champion for the environment and nature and green causes. And one of the most notable examples of that is her recent opposition to the policies that are being conceived of in terms of expansion of oil palm plantations in Northeast India. I have had the pleasure of meeting Ms. Sangma when I was doing my PhD fieldwork in Garo Hills way back in 2011. And I really appreciate her honoring that decade-old connection to honor us today and come and speak to us. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Sangma to come and please address the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Varun Goswami, Dr. Divya Vasudev, and all the members of Conservation Initiative, Mr. Pragyan Sharma, who is the creator of this film today that we are going to be viewing, and all the distinguished panelists and my dear friends. First of all, I would like to say that it is a great pleasure to be here today. And I thank Conservation Initiative for including me in today's program. Conservation is the key to all environmental related processes, be it climate change, preservation of endangered wildlife, and all endemic species of flora. Community conservation is one of the successful models adopted since the last 50 years in Belize, in Rwanda, some of the African countries, and also in East Asia, as it incorporates knowledge gained by the participating communities in the hotspot and the scientific data accumulated over time. In our own state of Meghalaya, community conservation has for centuries been an integral part of the cultural ethos of our tribal communities. In Jente Hills, the practice of indigenous faith known as the Nyantri have protected and conserved several tracts of forests, also known as the sacred groves, for religious and cultural beliefs. In the community conservation model, the approach is, rather than protecting nature from people, it looks for practical solutions that allow humans and other species to thrive together. Community conservation has the potential to mitigate the conflict between human-related activities and nature, as multiple stakeholders share the same platform and focus on conservation in the most sustainable way. The synthesis also adds economic value to the participating communities through ecotourism and knowledge sharing. Community conservation model characterizes land use for both man and the wild for a long-term period and in a sustainable way. As data generated through long-term studies suggest, conserving natural resources that we all depend on is in everybody's interest. I would like to state an example here. In Africa, for instance, the mountain gorilla numbers have increased. From mere 100 in 2003, it has become 480 in 2012, as per the latest record. Tourists come to Rwanda, Uganda, the Democratic Republic of Congo to catch a glimpse of these magnificent creatures. The tourists mean money, jobs, and a better standard of living for nearly all the villages that are situated near these community reserves. Because the gorillas are such an important resource, local people are committed to protecting them. It's just one example of how conservation helped local communities to benefit from it. In our state of Meghalaya, 74 notified community reserves with an area of 63 square kilometer has been identified since 2014. The ownership of the land is vested on the local communities after the establishment of the community reserve, and no change in land use pattern is permitted after the establishment of the community reserve. The western hoolock gibbon, the only ape species which is found in India, is inhabited in the Silbalgri hoolock gibbon reserve in West Garo Hills. Hoolock gibbon, which is also popularly known as huro in Garo, is amongst the rare species that is found in the Nokrek National Park, which is situated in West Garo Hills. About 40 kilometers from Tura, in the Sonja Wildlife Rescue Center, the western gibbons are also being rehabilitated. And I'm very happy to let you know that I have been a part of some of the rehabilitation programs where I have witnessed the hoolocks being released into the wild. And to be honest, such a joy to just see them come back to nature and find a way back to, incorporate them back into their natural habitat. So that was a big experience for me and something that I will always remember. In the year 2007, after the discussions between the GHADC and the village folks, the community reserve shall be established in the land donated by the village. The reserve will be managed by the managing committee of the Silbalgri village, and the reserve has been registered by the GHADC. The initiative is undertaken to protect, promote, and rehabilitate the western gibbon population, which is endemic to this area. In conclusion, it is just a few of my humble opinion as to how we can help improve the community conservation concept. Firstly, I think it is very important that we create and protect the wildlife corridors which are identified. And these will create safe passages for the wild animals, and they will be able to find a way to travel from one place to the other in a safe manner without any kind of conflict being created. Secondly, in the national parks, the community reserve and the assigned wildlife corridors must work in tandem to create bigger spaces for wildlife and flora to flourish. Thirdly, value addition to the biodiversity assets must be pursued through regulated ecotourism and active participation of local communities. Fourthly, community conservation models are geospecific and are of diverse value. Knowledge sharing through exchange programs of communities will omit the outliers and encourage adoption of innovative methods. And finally, and not the least, I would say that having or creating awareness through documentaries, social media is one of the most powerful ways to create consciousness among people about conservation. And I think that is why today's program is extremely important, because it is created with the intention to bring about awareness for conservation and community conservation that is already prevalent in Meghalaya. And for this, I would really like to congratulate the the person who has created the film, Mr. Pragyan Sharma, and I would to congratulate and wish him all the best for this screening. And I look forward to the deliberations that would take place post the screening of the documentary, the film. Thank you so much. Hylla Kublai.
Thank you, Ma'am Agatha, for that wonderful and that insightful perspective on community-based conservation here in Meghalaya, Northeast India, and as well as examples from elsewhere in the world, such as the mountain gorillas example from Africa. So next up, we have a brief introduction to the film by the director of the film, Mr. Pragyan Sharma, who's an aspiring filmmaker here at Conservation Initiatives. Pragyan will introduce us to the film before we screen it. So over to you, Pragyan.
Thank you, Biang, and thank you, ma'am. First, hello, everyone. I am Pragyan Sharma from, I'm a filmmaker, wildlife filmmaker, and an outreach affiliate at Conservation Initiative. Today, we are very happy to present before you this film, Haba Hylla Huleng, or The Call of the Gibbon, a film which will show the initiatives and efforts taken by the local community of Hima Malai Sohmat area in Meghalaya, and this will show how they are trying to restore the environment and their forests, conserving their wildlife by conserving the flagship species, the western hoolock gibbon. You will also see in this film how they got the motivation that drove them to take such an inspirational step, and as an audience, how we can be inspired by this their such an inspirational move, and how we can help them in doing so. Moreover, this film will show how, as an organization, Conservation Initiative is working towards facilitating and boosting their efforts, so such that it will bear fruits of sustainability and harmony between the nature and the local community, and also bring well-being to the well-being for the future generations. This film was made in a collaborative manner, and with the help of the community leaders, the local community, and with limited resources. So I would like to thank the people of Hima Malai Sohmat area, our team at CI, and also I would thank everyone who has directly or indirectly helped in making the film, including Batin Shine, Ban and Wal. Especially, I would like to thank Ban for making such amazing video footages of his people and place, which was used in this film. Also, I would like to mention that working with a language that's very new to me, this was a very great experience to me. And for that, I want to thank Ezra and Biang for helping me and guiding me through the filmmaking process, and working with the language. And especially, I would like to thank Biang for the pain he had to take to do the multiple checks. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you like the movie. Thank you.
Thanks, Pragyan. So we'll now proceed with the screening of the film.
Haba ki Huleng ki kanthi na weu dieng sha wei pat ki kring ya ka jing mudur jongi bat pen kan mau bangi don ka jing dai bat jan bat kamariang ka ba samling ba ka jaka puta ki briu bat ka imlang sa lang hi.
Kat hakaba ka Huleng ka don ka pa ka ta ka jika ka danglong ka Hima Malai Sohmat.
ha ka binta ka bashathe jong ka jilla Meghalaya hajan mausan ram ladon santli ki shnong ki bashang halor ki lom balaker pelun da ki lau ba lausan kini ki shnong ki penlong ya ka Hima Malai Sohmat kawa omngi ka tuit na lam shatei shasep ngi bat kawa rimen pat shathe bon ki breu ha ka ni ka hima ki im da ka rep ka riang ba pher hala ki bri la jong
ki breu hang ne snong hajing sha ki im be da kabar rap ma ki rap yakini ki sensar bar ki rap yakini ki saterpat khendia kan soi ki thung ki jing thung ke ba kum ki tempo kini ki tai hendrei tang khendia ba ki badai kata te mensua por mensua te ki don bon ba ki berat tempo ma kum ki tempo sa marit ki kwai hendrei menta pal astang duna na kata te ki brek ba menta hi ki ba bon hi ki rap sensar bat u bo saterpat te ki don ru ki brek ki barap da ka serti mentak sedang ban serti klau tu ki tangi klau ban serti ban yo yakini ki bantung yakini ki pan karo bantung yakini ki so menken bantung yakini ki jhur te tamba kani kampada dei ek boong ba ki bakan long be selensar ya bro sisnong
wat la ki breu ki hapenron kam ban trei ban kata baro shisnem hakini ki bri ki badan senda bat ki klau berben kini ki lom bat ki them ki long ki jakadem ya ki mrat ki mereng ki bapher wat ya ki tu ki kenjam rat ki bahado mentaru empat shem don jingtip shapang jongki
kini ki klau shathan Hima Malai Sohmat ni jutip nadu menshwa badon bun ki jad rat ki ba im ki ba manchane ngi juyo sngo khana na ki breu ki ba sa shane ba ki don kita ki skei ki khiat ki dingim pat bun jad ki shre henrei pat nakini ki khana ngim shim layo ya kata ka jingtip bnya shapang ki mrat ki ba im ha ki klau shane ngitip shai ba ki dangdon ha kini ki klau henrei ban shu ong no kumni ba kila nang roi lani kila jandu jatnyo ngim la ban ong klem kata ka jingtip bnya shapang jongki hakipor menta ngitip na keleng ka perthai ba bun kimrat klau kila sedang du jat wat hangni ha jela Meghalaya ru ti ngidon kam ban lum ya kata ka jingtip bnya knang ba ngin la ban pene pensa ya ki merat ki ba bun jat shani
por ban khna jungiro kimrat kimreng ki don sibon habangi tang hakine ki jika bangi shong kumne ro kimrat ki don kaskei hangne ha snong ro nang nen preng snong ro kayai lante kayai long bai snong kim sipteng nomor ki bon tikine ki jika ro don bon ki skei ki khiat ka khiat sisen dang natrai dang empat slem ra dang kumba sposnem kadang wan me hagina ki plang hangne te hagi pod khna jungi kimrat ki huleng lele kim sipteng reu ya ki breu abang shong kumne ki huleng ki wan hagina ki deng ki se ki wan pek ki wan jingo.
Gibbons are a creature of the trees. They are mostly found up in the high canopies, amongst the leaves, moving from branch to branch, and rarely ever come to the ground. So gibbons require dense, thick forests to survive, just as how the forests require the gibbons to be complete. Every morning, the forest comes alive with the call, the duet of the gibbon, when the male and the female, and sometimes the young also, scream out to the rest of the forest and say that this area is mine and I'm here. It sounds as if there are many gibbons when they call, but actually gibbons are found in really small families, just like us, of just one adult male, one adult female, and their young. That is, they are monogamous. When the young grow up, they move out into other homes, to other parts of the forest, and form their own family and continue to survive.
Minshwa ki Huleng ki Judan habun ki benta jongka North East India, hari Bangladesh bat hari Myanmar ru. Henrei bentapan kila no na ki babun kini ki jaka, namar baki klau kini ki jaka kila no bat ki briu ki siat yap ya kini ki merat. Benta ngi Shem bagi Huleng ki sapret setang kendiat teli haki kendiat teli ki klau ki badang sa haki ni ki jaka kawai na kini ki klau ka hapo ka Hima Malai Sohmat.
Ka jingtip ka babnya syapang ki merat ki ba im ha ki klau jong ka Hima Malai Sohmat kam tam ya ki Huleng kadang long ka baduna shisha ka jingpa jong ki Huleng kalong ka ba phla hado kata kam tam haba ki jupa dang step perngap daki sur ki bajam bat kumta ka rukom lum jingtip syapang jong kiru kalong ka ba pher na ki wei
ngirum jingtip ki Huleng lang dakabang ibu yakini ki saw recorder ngi ibu hane ki cloud jongi ki badan hang national ngilej ibu yakini ki saw recorder maka ki saw recorder ngila la antat lupa long ba kito kin record baro sisngi baro step kat ba kito ki Huleng kidang pak ne kidang hala kam tu long kito ka saw recorder kala record kan yaki ya ka saw jongi
wat lada ka jingtip ka babnya syapang ki mrat bat ki klau ha ka Hima Malai Sohmat kadang duna shibon Henry ki breu ki basyang basa ha ki shnong jong ka Hima kila itu ba ki klau ki betap ha ki ni ki tan kila nang kela na ka jinglong ka ba menshwa
bari berkajing kela jong ka mariam ki klau ki tam ha ki por menshwa kat kum ki khana tang ki ba ya tu khana pateng bat hadu ka jinglong khana jongi menshwa ikan mau kadon bun ke jing pher war menshwa kadang duna ka jing pomding pathar ki bru ki pat daroi kadang duna ndrai kadang mi ki snyam hadu kini ki singi momenta ki bru kla nang bun kla nang roi ti namar ba ki dei ki jeka ka bangi dot kam bandram te ki klau ki tap kat nang mi ki singi ki snyam no ki stang no namar balai ki pom ki ding ban penmi pisah te ban nong bri nong langkha ba kin yo bandram kin yo patre bakta ta ka dei ka daw ka ba penlong ba ki klau ki tap ki la hadu ki singapore dan dari hak ini kisah kendiat benai ongno jong kene kesdam arajar khat pra kalau don kajing suthet hadin ba dalia jong katu kat ne ki breu na po ka snong dui ki balawan ban jungo kai yang ba ki wi ba ki jaka ki ba kim pat long ai ba kene ke jaka jungi te menta kala sang rung kata kajing sngo ba ngidot kam ban sumar ini ki klau ta long kum balong menta kadang long hitang kadang kajing sedang masuk hu tang katu kan ngon hendrai habarok kadang sistem kumlong ta
dari perkara impor barang yang kena ongi agak por agak jumlong jumpi kau di betap sini jumlong yang itemnat ha agak jumlong jumpi kau di betap hiding gisi jumpi nang bir nang biang ha ki merang ro ki nang don ki nang sa ki don ki kau makin nang biang ki kau di betap jadi adin katu kan dia berde aku ngilak sedang kam ayungi kam hek nak niat itu Henry hadin untuk beli kila sedang ban pompa thar ban penduk kinum di klau kia thang kia kumta nyim persutu te kumno ban sumar ban penek pensan ya kadung klau ha aku jipor kelas sedang du jan pada kadung ke klau kila kelas sedang du nomor ba kila le pathar kumta kila thang kila pom klam jengtiep ke hari mentala kumba laisnam sosnam i layo manisya kan kini ki rurung ba ni ha posnong kini lam juga tersim ti ongin haban sumar ki dom klau hari menta kumba laisnam sosnam i ba kelas sedang san biang kelas sedang long sedang man biang
ngi kum ka seng ki bala shamru ba ki breu ki la nang soto ya ka jingjulor jong ki klau ngila persang ban penslur yaki nong shong snong jong ka Hima haka jing tmu jong ki ban penne yaki klau ki betap daga ba penlong yaki program ba pher ban pen scam ru yaki riti ki dustur ki baya dei bat kamaryang ban pen im bat ban penne yaka
katim jungi kala penlong ki awareness program hapo ken ba malai hapo ken ba short of god upper primary school bar hapo mau kasan upper primary school ka im jong kini ka awareness program kalong ban penstu ikna kumno ban penek pensa e kamaryang bat kumju ikimrat merang ki badon kini saudong sokun jungi ki activities bangi penlong kini ki awareness program kalong ga drawing competition bat ka teams kalong ban penek pensa ya kamaryang ba ki Huleng but baar kedai ka photo exhibition but ka balai kedai ka movie screening Sepang kamariang bat kimanat kimarang
Kinong jungo perthei ki balawan kai shaka Hima Malai Sohmat kiyo i ka jing ipo ipeng but jing sei so kamariang shani kinget baki brio klempep kin wan pet yakini ki jaka but kani kan long ka kabu kesiar ban pli ki lat kamai da kumwei yaki nong shong shnong shani.
Meghalaya is home to a wide variety of rivers, ranging from your plateau top rivers to the steep slopes on the south, and then as they gradually stabilize and then they flow into the gentle plains of Bangladesh to the south, or the rolling hills of the north and the east and the west. We've got a huge variety of rivers, and all of them are pretty unique, and all of them support a wide diversity of land, of forest, of wildlife, of flora. The Hima Malai Sohmat area is an especially interesting area because it supports a wide variety of rivers, from your bedrock rivers with granite canyons that are soaring 60 feet into the sky, and that's from at river level. You've got these smooth, beautiful, polished, huge single pieces of granite that soar up into the air, or you've got the more gentle rolling hills, kind of meandering rivers that are there to the south of it. So it's got a wide variety of stuff, right down from little rivulets and little streams, and a lot of limestone areas as well, which means that these water systems are actually creating complex caves and complex underground channels. The Ungi River flows on the east of the Hima Malai Sohmat area, and that's easily one of the most beautiful rivers we have here in Meghalaya. It's a very dramatic river. It loses a lot of elevation very quickly, and that actually makes it very unique in terms of giving it very interesting geology. When we camp in these on the banks of the Ungi in these areas, in the mornings we hear very beautiful, and it's almost guaranteed. It's almost every morning that we hear the gibbons call. And these gibbons are calling, and their calls are echoing, bouncing off the canyon walls and into the forest. A lot of them, like there's a large group of them. So we've heard that it's pretty endangered, and there's not that many of them left in there. They're an absolute treat for us who are traveling through there, and we also realize that there is immense potential for sustainable and responsible ecotourism in this area. There are cave systems, there are viewpoints, there are beautiful plateau top views, there are steep jungle walks, there are canyons to explore, and every time we go there we're always astounded with the beauty of the place. We hope that the efforts of various quarters, various agencies coming together with the society, with the community, bears fruit for the development of responsible tourism for these areas, because it could be a real game changer for the people, bring in a lot of employment, and be something that is responsible and done in a very sustainable manner for this area.
Tourism gadi gawe na kilat kilenti ba ban ai ke chingrap na ka banta ki nong snong hapo jong ka snong ibar gawe me tang ka snong gane ka khamta ma gane ka than ge chungi ma ka kidon santali ki snong gane ka hima te kidon ki chaka ki ba uble ula ai ula kalkhush ka die te kalong ka chingkhu na ka banta chungi ha ga ladangi la ban pentrikam ya gane ka tourism te kidon shibun ki lese ki jingmen toy ki bang yo na ka leng jong ka tourism kum ka ki kam ka jam ka bakila ban ai na ka banta ki samla jungka snong ga jungi mon mara ki ki singi i baki bon ki samla ki ba la dep ki jing pule ki jungki te ka kam ka jam ka khamduna te de ka jing don jungka tourism lese kan long ka jing rap na ka banta ki ki para samla ga ne ka than ki jungi.
Tourism kadi ka one of the most potential area kadi. Padang ifshimi ka range jung kani ka jaga jungi and sora we are almost the same range. Himdan difference ikata, and sceneries ki don hangi are quite beautiful, they are very natural kaba ngiyui, and kasyong stan hangi menta kolong kumno mangin penon kami ya itu ki jaga kumbangon kadang very rich potential hangi tourism. So kasyulong wa we are lack of information, we are lack of fund to start ekonomi come.
Tourism baru khai kibru kelas itu nanti ba ngirun kam hiba sedang gitu nih baru khai kipai ba ke sebenarnya kai i namar paling gila yo lat ki ban le kai sini sitai bat kan sisa kawan ra ke jimun toy bat kini jaga jongiru kini jaga kin itu napa bat sedang ini ke tourism kidon kiriat kidon jiwa kidon gicai nanta kadang kani ke krem puri ke hajan kalau kibru ke lawan hang tu gila ban poi seniru dan dijaga tempat kalau pes hana kemudian tourism di daerah jing sedang jong ini jong babu tensan ini bikin hon jong di itu kalau long ke ke pa sibuknya kemudian ketika jaga jong ini nampak ini sedang jong ini kemudian ketika hima
pi ladang ila man penek pensa nengkong ik huleng kabang ila sutum ta dan du jan kapong san kelong ba habangi ila penek ki huleng kine ki klau mak huleng kamut ki dan kam ya ki klau ki bahe ki ding ki bahe ka klau ki barben ti sisin penek ki huleng kamut ki klau ki ne ti dadangi penek yu huleng ti kamut ngin yo ki ding ki bahe bar ka umru kan ne bar kini ki khna rit jongi menta ki khun ki si ki jongi ki bahadin habut kila ban yo biang ki kila ban numduk kanya kini kawa dia kini ki ki bagidan hani po hapok kani kejaka kani bat sakawairu ka pertengen ya ka klau bat kini haba katengen ka klau kemud kini ki ding ki baki ki breu pan da ka im sakpo menta kini miap sendet ken hendai lada ki klau gimdan ta kemud ka kan terkong ba simbam dan ta kemud sistem bam dan ta kemud ngamla si uban ong ya simbam dan ta kemud ngiyap hi ngi barokhoi ndai tam yap ki marat ru ngi barokhoi ngiyap tengah i ka jing pendek pensa kini ki huleng bat ki wi jai marat ki bengilap ong kalau kajing im yangihi amda dei bong bangi kuak penek pensa huleng kuak ban i huleng hendai kadai nam ta jongihi nam ta ka live ka bansawan ka yangi pi la sai hadin san post nem ka banwan ngimla ban tip kini khun jongi menta kadangi ngi penek pensa ki huleng menta bar ki klau ki betap ka san post nem ka bansawan kini ki khun ki se ki jongi pan kina sadaka wai per program halor jongi klau ki bang pensa penek pensa mangi lesi kila balik research lesi kila ban lek sedekwi program ba banging impala ban snguthu menta lesi kila ban penlong kawai ka sanctuary hangne ka bangi ke ba maki kin sayo ya kalat ka jakapo lesi hakata kapor ka jing kamai bisa kam desu na usta terpat ta por se uyap kuma i menta usta terpat ula yap bun bula yap utempau bun yap klam kuai bun yap klam sitepi tengi i balada ka jing penek pensa ingi huleng ka ngi penek pensa iki ding ni kawan suki kabut saka ka penek pensa tenang tapan kamut kini ki bansawan pat kila banle khambun ki nam taka labai ki jongki
layu i badakawai ka jingtmu ki nongshong shnong jongka Hima Malai Sohmat ki la persang ban penek pensa ya ki klau ki betap jongki hakaju ka poru ladon ki jing persang bas kem ban wad ya ki lat da kumwai pat hakaliang ka kamai kaji ban pentut syo ya kamariang henry ban penne ya ka haduk ki pateng ki bansawan
I hope that everyone enjoyed that film, and I do hope that everyone got something to think about community-based conservation from that film. And if you do have any questions that arise from having seen the film, please do put them in the question and answer box. So we move on to the next part of the program, which is where we will hear from our panelists about their different thoughts and their different experiences in community-based conservation in Northeast India. And we will first have Mr. Tingshan Dokhat, who we've all seen just now in the film. And Mr. Tingshan is the secretary of the Tourism Society at Malai Sohmat, And he has been taking conservation efforts at Malai Sohmat forward, and he'll be telling us a bit more about the conservation scenario at Malai Sohmat and the role that the community itself and the tourism society plays out there. Bating Shan, over to you.
Yes. Hello, Babiang. So, good evening, everyone, especially Mrs. Agatha Sangma, our MP. So, thank you, Madam, for your presence. I hope everyone is audible. I'm audible, Babiang? Okay. So, actually, you see, as you've seen in the film, that everyone is talking about the conservation about the hoolock gibbon. So, at the end of the day, is actually, at the end of the day, is about the community-based people who will actually conserve. So it's the local people who will conserve this, the forest and the gibbons, as we have seen in the film. So, so our role as a society, as the tourism society, is to create awareness program among the people, to actually collaborate with the communities, and actually to give the people the idea of the sustainable green job. So one of the green jobs that we have actually we have seen, it will be actually effective, is the nature tourism. So as we have seen in the film, that is AIM, the Rang Bashnong, all of them actually have taken part in a very effective way. I'll tell you that this AIM is so responsible that he has imposed a fine of 5,000 per, if anyone who violated the law. So, and one of the village called Mauropat, they also have already actually imposed a fine if anyone shoot all the animals in Mauropat, in that area, in that particular village. So almost all of the villages and all the 5 areas, they have taken it in a very, in a very effective way. So, but I don't call this as an achievement, but yes, we have achieved to some extent. But there's another, again, a big challenging way ahead, because you see, as we have seen in the film, that the people also need the forest, and the wildlife also, the wild animals also need the forest. So in this regard, actually, we as the cooperative society, we try our best to, to think of some kind of alternative activities. So one of the biggest alternative activities that will be more effective is to push on the natural tourism in this area. So if we can push the nature tourism, we saw this as one of the sustainable, green job for the people, because now, as one of the panelists has said, that there are a lot of graduates that we have from Shillong, they came back to the villages, and these people are actually capable to take the green job activities. It depends upon us how to guide them, how to actually create awareness among them. So now actually I'll tell you that from the awareness that we gave, from the the consolidation that, I mean, the conservation that we have, I mean, that we trying to give awareness to people, 9 guides have been formed. I mean, the guide association has been formed. So these guide association will actually multiply. So it's these youth which have came forward. These will actually do the rest of the job, including with our our inspirations. So I'm here to thank for the conservation initiative, because this is actually from the start. We have we came to know about the conservation initiative. So they are the ones who actually inspired us to how to conserve and how to go about all these things. So this is our there are a lot of things that I want to say, but due to time constraints, so I think I would like to conclude on in this way actually. So if anything you can ask me, you can ask regarding the conservation work in our place.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pating Chan, for that perspective on the community-based conservation and the role of the tourism society out there, and the different challenges that the community itself faces while taking community-based conservation forward, and also the different achievements that the community out there has managed to achieve. Next, we have with us Ms. Anu James, who is the divisional forest officer in of the wildlife Khasi Hills Wildlife Division here in Meghalaya Forest Department. Unfortunately, Ms. Anu James cannot be with us live, but she has sent a video recording of her thoughts and her perspectives on this issue. So we'll play that for you now.
Firstly, I would like to thank the conservation initiatives for bringing us all in a common platform for the cause of conservation of a charismatic species, the hoolock gibbons, and also the continuous efforts from the year 2018 onwards in Hima Malai Sohmat area through the active community engagement. I believe that this film on community-based conservation in Meghalaya, The Call of the Gibbons, will in fact arouse within each one of its viewers the inner call of our duty to conserve and preserve the wildlife. In this discussion, I would like to put forth some of my thoughts on wildlife conservation scenario in the state of Meghalaya based on my working experience in two landscapes, the Garo Hills and Khasi Hills. Firstly, with respect to diversity point of view, in fact, we have a rich diversity of wildlife, both floral and faunal species, as we are in the confluence zone of the Himalayan, peninsular India and the Indo-Burma biodiversity region. We have the majestic Asiatic elephants, gaur species, Asiatic black bear, hoolock gibbons, slow loris, various species of deers, various species of cats, both big and small. We have an array of amphibians, reptiles, birds, many of which are endemic to the state of Meghalaya. So equally rich is the floral diversity of our state. The second discussion point I would like to put across is the nature of the forest and the unique landholding pattern in the state. The direct control of the forest department is just less than 6% of the total forest area. This means that the rest of the area is under the direct or indirect control of the people. Keeping this point in view, I would like to put forth my third discussion point. For wildlife conservation to be effective, we need the real involvement and active participation of the community if our wildlife should have a chance to survive beyond the turn of this century. The importance of community-based conservation efforts have to be understood and appreciated in this context. Coming back to the species of our discussion, the hoolock gibbons, the ape which closely resembles us. These are primarily arboreal species spending almost the whole of their lives in trees. Gibbons can be taken as flagship species for our conservation efforts in Meghalaya across the various landscapes where they naturally occur. Hoolocks need good forests, tall trees, and most importantly, habitat connectivity. They need rich and diverse forests which can support their nutritional requirements and not monocrops of areca or oil palm. Here comes the greatest challenge for hoolocks and all other wildlife species: the severe habitat fragmentation, the conversion of the forest, and the degradation of the forest quality as well. Having put across some of the challenges, again, let me come to the conservation efforts of Hima Malai Sohmat. How to institutionalize such conservation efforts and ensure that the gains earned are not lost in the way and we remain committed to our primary cause of conservation. If we are able to carve out a community reserve in this area, it can really give a boost to our conservation efforts. Being declared a community reserve, these areas will enter the Protected Area Network under Wildlife Protection Act, and under this protective blanket will be eligible for central sector scheme funding under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Most importantly, apart from the funding angle, a scientific management plan will be in place to ensure that this area is protected in true sense by the very own community who lives there. At this juncture, I recall my discussion and meetings with the local community leaders in our attempt to create a community reserve here. There have been many roadblocks and the path is not easy. But I'm hopeful. We might be divided by political ideologies, but this should not come in the way of our conservation efforts. The Forest Department is ever committed in our mission in spite of all the odds. Whenever I hear the song of hoolocks, I feel rejuvenated, I feel blessed, I feel an inner connect with nature. Let us not silence the songs. Let our future generations too inherit our beautiful land together with all its richness. Let our hoolocks continue to sing fearlessly, and let our hills and valleys reverberate.
We thank Anu ma'am, who, even though she couldn't be here, she made the effort of putting her thoughts on video recording and sending it to us. And that was also a very useful information to know the institutional mechanisms from the forest government that exist to promote community-based conservation here in Meghalaya and other parts of India. So next up, we have Dr. Duwaki Rangat, who is an assistant professor at St. Edmund's College here in Shillong. And Dr. Duwaki will share his thoughts and his experiences and his perspectives about the role of culture in conservation out here in Meghalaya. Dr. Duwaki has also been involved with the efforts of gibbon conservation in Malai Sohmat from the start. Over to you, Duwaki.
Thank you, Bian. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Bian. First of all, very good evening to everyone, and good evening, Ma'am Agatha, our Honorable MP. I would like to thank my friend Varun for inviting me to this very important program on conservation. And being a part of conservative initiatives has always been, something which is very dear to me. Well, as indicated in the program, I am to share my thoughts on culture and conservation of the forests in Meghalaya. So let me begin by saying that Meghalaya is a diverse state having a sizable number of indigenous people, indigenous groups that includes the Khasis, the Jaintias, and the Garos, which are represented in higher numbers, and also other groups such as the Karbis, the Mikers, the Rabhas, which are represented in smaller numbers. The tribal people of Meghalaya nurture tracts of forests that are located close to their settlements as reserve forests as part of their culture, their religious beliefs, or for different community benefits like obtaining water resources or forest resources, etc. We all know that the Khasi Hills, the Jaintia Hills, and the Garo Hills, they are a home to a large number of forests that are held as sacred by the indigenous people, and therefore these forests remain undisturbed by any human activity. So these sacred forests, or Kilaukantang that we call in the Khasi language, these are believed to be the dwelling places of the deities or the guardian gods, which are known as Urinko Ubasa in Khasi, or Urinkau in the Panar language. So Urinko Ubasa, as per the Khasi philosophy, is believed to be the guardian that protects and safeguard our forests, our land, our rivers, our water sources, or in totality, our Meiram O, or Mother Nature. And it is also believed that Urinko Ubasa also safeguard all the creatures in their surroundings and regulate the attitude of mankind towards the environment, thereby giving it its due respect. So these sacred forests are hence considered to be the spiritual places where prayers are offered, and we have the rites and rituals which are performed from time to time. So it is therefore forbidden to collect or to gather anything that belongs to these forests, even as small as leaves or twigs, or even to collect water from streams or rivers that are present in these forests. So the Khasi and the Jaintia people have therefore, since time immemorial, practiced conservation, even though they don't have the scientific approach or the scientific knowledge towards dealing with conservation. So these practices have passed from one generation to another generation, like some traditional or customary law. And it is these practices of the ancient Khasis and Jaintias that have been seen to promote conservation by their cultural beliefs, the religious beliefs, and even the customary law. Apart from these sacred forests or sacred groves, we also have the village forests such as the Lao Shnong or the Lao Adong, the Lao Rat, Lao Rikanti, so on and so forth. And all of these, which are currently known as the community reserve forests or community reserved areas, these in fact are potentially these forests, they serve as a number of ecosystem services to the communities, including serving as catchment areas for water sources, conservation sites of flora and faunal biodiversity, and more importantly, these forests serves as a sanctuary to a variety of medicinal plants. So therefore, the tribal communities of Meghalaya, through an age-old tradition, have been protecting nature and their natural resources, thus reflecting great awareness of the need of conservation and management. So that is all that I want to share with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Duaki, for shedding light on the cultural traditions and the cultural norms and practices that we have here for conservation. And I think that these things that you've mentioned are something that is important, that we need to keep in mind when trying to incorporate and merge them with more modern day scientific conservation methods, and also the legal and the institutional framework. We do need to keep these cultural traditions in mind as well. So next up, we have Mr. Chuseki Yimchunga. Mr. Chuseki is a grassroots conservationist from Nagaland, so we'll be hearing also about a different perspective from a different state here in Northeast India. And Mr. Chuseki will speak about community-based conservation in his home village of Faken.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, is it audible? Okay.
It is.
Okay. So, yeah. See, first of all, I just wanted to thank to all of you, and first, I'll just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Susegi from Faken village, under Punggol South Division, and it comes under Gifri district of Nagaland in remotest part of Nagaland. It touches the Indo-Myanmar in the eastern part of Nagaland. So it is an honor to share few things about the gibbons in Nagaland. Set in a dense forest in the foothills of Mount Saramadi is Faken Village Community Conservation Area under Punggol Subdivision. It comes under Gifri district of Nagaland. It harbors the diverse species that are conservation important, such as mammals like clothy leopard, wild dog, Asiatic black bear, rare species such as Blight's dracoband, etc. In other less charismatic species such as Bhutan glory butterfly, which is uncommon in Nagaland. Additionally, our forests used to also have the presence of hoolock gibbon till recent past. Today also the gibbons are still present in the adjoining forest area of Myanmar in some villages towards the south. However, owing to this traditional hunting in the past, we don't see or hear the gibbons that often now. Just like the other tribe in Nagaland, in other part of Northeast India, we Yimkyong have a strong cultural association with the forest as its inhabitants. We have been depending on forest earlier and even now for our day-to-day subsistence. For example, even now we collect resources such as jungle patta, mushroom extra from our forests, which forms an important components for our daily diets. During our forefathers' time, they don't have timetable like watch and calendar. Similarly, in early time, villagers used to depend on birds' call, gibbons' call, and to decide our daily activities. For example, there is a saying by our ancestors that the gibbons call twice in the morning, once in the afternoon. The gibbons' first call in the morning is a sign for breakfast and start heading towards the field once they hear the gibbons' second call in the late morning. Sometimes they used to hear the gibbons' calls in the afternoon, which would signify the time to have lunch. However, in the increase, however, in the recent past, the loss of the gibbons in the area has weakened these cultural links which have been there in the past years. Few reasons for this are population growth. The increase in numbers of population has led to increase in Jum cultivation area, which has in turn led to decrease in Jum cultivation cycle. The other important factors, the loss of the species are hunting. Though seasonal stop of hunting are adopted by the village council, still it is threat to the wildlife species because it is not been fully stopped. Hunting is some amount still continue. Due to this, the importance of forest and biodiversity is diminishing. Our village elders, youth from the village realize these threats and have started working on raising awareness and protecting of this forest at our level. Some of these steps that our villagers have taken are creation of Viking wildlife sanctuary and community reserve forest and working closely with the forest department. Creation of village level committees such as the village council, ecotourism, action committee, etc. has adopted a strong resolutions where the defaulters are taking strict action as per the resolution adopted by the concerned village councils, which is the major steps taken by the village community to preserve the forest so as to increase the endangered species. Joint villages such as Vongsabong village, Tanamir village, these programs is initiated by the Viking Village Council is an important steps to conserve wildlife which holds every once in a year. Youth involvement in conservation through creating Pudan Glory Eco Club with the aim shoot with camera, not with gun. Working with the different NGOs such as Conservation Initiative, CI, by taking camera drives and awareness programs in trainings to systematically document region biodiversities and implementation of projects that leads to safeguard the importance of biodiversity and sustainable livelihoods. The aim and objective of our village community to work for the protection of the forest and inhabits gibbons and bring back the lost glory of Nagaland. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and looking forward to work together in coming days. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much, Chuziki, for giving us that wonderful information about your village out there. And there are a lot of similarities with, I think, between your landscapes and your village out there in Nagaland and here as well. Most importantly, the role of the villages in forming committees and youth youth action and youth involvement and different societies as well. And thank you so much again.
Thank you.
As a final speaker, we have with us Mr. Lansuthung Lotha, who is a forest officer with the Nagaland Forest Department. And we will hear again the perspective from Nagaland about community-based conservation. And excitingly, Mr. Lansuthung is joining us from a tent, and I think he's at Pangpi, where the Amur falcons, the famous Amur falcons, are at the moment. Over to you, Mr. Lansuthung.
Right. Thank you very much. Good evening to you all. So yeah, greetings from Nagaland and also from the thousands and lakhs of Amur falcons that are roosting here right now. As you rightly pointed out, I'm in a tent camping in the forests, ensuring that the falcons are safe and everything's under control. That said, yeah, one word also to our honorable MP, Mema Sangma, you're such an inspiration, and thank you for all that you do for conservation. And we keep hoping, we keep rooting for you. So I just want to let you know that you're doing an amazing job, especially with regards to conservation. That said, when Varun contacted me regarding this, I could not say no to him. I knew that I'll be in field then, but I think it was an opportunity that I could not miss because there's so much to talk about, especially when it comes to community-based conservation in Nagaland. So yeah, I think one thing I just want to mention from the very start is that I strongly believe that for long-lasting conservation efforts to come about, it has to come from within. Like you cannot force it upon someone. It can work for a day or two, but if you're talking about long-lasting conservation efforts, it has to come from within, and I think that's a big task in itself. And I think the onus is on all of us on how to go about with that. That said, there's something that always comes to my mind when I talk about conservation. And see, the thing is, from all my experiences so far, like we tell people don't hunt, or we tell them don't divert your forest or agricultural land for something that's very drastic, that doesn't help wildlife in any way. But the next question after that is, what next for them? Fine, we tell them don't do this, don't do that, but what's next for them? I'm especially talking about those people who are like in the very rural areas, those communities that are at higher risk of all the struggles that life could throw at us. And for them, it's a very big decision to make. If you tell them to give up hunting or say, use the land judiciously, it's a big decision they have to make because it's survival for them. It's about trying to have a income for their families, to sustain their family. So in that sense, I think the biggest challenge that I see when I talk about community-based conservation is finding sustainable alternate livelihood options for them. Unless we ensure that we can provide them with options where they can now, we can rehabilitate them from what they're doing right now, it's going to be very difficult on them. So that's something I'm going to focus on today, and I'm just going to be talking about, the challenges like I mentioned. So when I talk about alternate livelihood options, I'm mostly focusing on sustainable alternate livelihood options, like I've mentioned, and yeah. So we tell people, okay, don't hunt, don't convert your forest, but there's another thing about the land use systems that we have. So fine, they don't hunt, they're protecting their animals, the wildlife. But what about their habitat? Because that's so equally important. Without the habitat, we don't have. I mean, the wildlife have nowhere to go, nowhere to stay. So when we talk about again land use patterns and systems, I think Varun have good idea because you worked with elephants, and I think we know that elephants need a large area. So I'm just going to take an example of where I am right now. I'm in Woka district. We have like Woka district has like the densest population of elephants in Nagaland, and right now these elephants are dispersing everywhere. There used to be in this very particular area called Bhakti Valley. It's like prime habitat for elephants, but over time, a lot of these areas have been converted to rubber plantations. And no study has been done on this, but I think it's safe to say that these change in land use patterns have been driving the elephants away to other places and causing a lot of human-elephant interactions in the process. So while I talk about alternative options, I also want to mention about this land use systems that we have currently. So yeah, now I am right now. Yang has mentioned I was in Pangti, but I want to just clarify to you that I'm not in Pangti actually. I'm in a neighboring village called Ariol, and for your information, like this year the falcons have shifted slightly to this place, and so I'm still here. It's still in Pangti, and we still are trying to figure out why the falcons shifted. But I think there is some sort of human or anthropogenic activities that happen in the prime roosting area that we know, and that's why they've shifted here. But still, again, there's some assumptions, and we need to really study how it's being affected. But yeah, talking about elephants and emerald falcons now, this is some of the examples I wanted to give. Now we're talking about oil palm happening and government pushing for that. I think I think at the end of the day, all of us are trying to, maybe government or the NGOs, whoever it is, like everyone's trying to help communities. I think that's our own ultimate target. But we also need to know, like, if we implement something, how it's going to affect the other people. Maybe 10 people benefits from it, but maybe 100 people are getting affected. If you talk about elephants, there's some people who are into rubber plantation and stuff, but we're talking about dozens more other villages that are being affected because the elephants have nowhere to go. So I think this is something that we need to really think about before we implement anything else. It's what I think. But yeah, on the other hand, I mean, the good side is that in Nagaland, since many years back, people have been having something called community forest. It's not exactly a community reserve, but they have been setting aside a part of their forest, and that's how the villagers would, try to ensure that everything is safe there. And as a matter of fact, in the same line, now we have like around 127 declared community reserves in Nagaland. That's the highest in the country. So I think that's like a hope for us, because the same model that was there before now is like through legal notification and stuff, like, people can be assisted, more help can be given to them. So in that sense, I think there is still hope, and I think we're still going the right direction. But still, what I'm trying to say is that there's still a lot more things that we need to do to ensure that community-based conservation really happens, and people, who are into community-based conservation are not feeling the brunt of it, but actually they're trying to, or maybe they're getting some benefits out of it. The next thing I want to mention is that, as much as we talk about conservation and encourage communities to protect their fast declining biodiversity, again, it all comes back to what I was saying, ensuring that their livelihood options are made available. Because I think we all strive to have at least a comfortable life, and I don't think we can deny anyone from having that. So this is something I cannot emphasize more, that alternate livelihood options need to be met for these people. So how are we going to engage them, those hunters, turn protectors, if we would say, maybe Like, what are options for them? Could be ecotourism, could be guides, could be research work, whatever it is. I think we need to start mapping out or writing them down so we can at least have some sort of options for them. And other thing is that we also need to really, I think our former speakers have already mentioned about how we need to create more awareness programs. And I think what I feel is that we need to keep talking and talking and talking and talking to people. We need to make them understand that, when we're losing wildlife, especially for Nagaland or for most parts of Northeast, because our culture, our traditions are like so interwoven with nature. When we lose them, we're losing a part of our identity. And that's what worries me most. Many of the birds, animals that are for our elders, so like we don't see it now. I just wonder about the next generation. In due course of time, we're going to be losing our identity, and that's happening already. That's happening in front of us, and that's something that really scares me. So when we talk about them, doing conservation, and we try to bring them, alternate livelihood options, we also need to talk to them about how we might be at risk of losing our very fragile identity. And I'm just mentioning all of this because one thing that I also mentioned is that, sometimes we go to communities, we tell them to do conservation, but sadly there's no follow-up. And I think follow-up is very, very important. We go to them, talk to them, and we leave. But we need to revisit these areas. We need to give them some hand-holding, give them suggestions, because these are villages or rural people area, that we're talking about. Like I said, communities at high risk. So just one thing I just want to mention before I just end my talk is that, stopping someone from hunting doesn't ensure conservation. We need to help our people reach a point where they don't feel the need to hunt. They don't feel the need to cause drastic change to their land use systems. But also, we also need to ensure that they live a comfortable life while also protecting and conserving their wildlife, their biodiversity, and their identity. So with this, I just wanted to share my talk. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Lanso. I think you summed up community-based conservation here in Northeast India very well and pointed out important points such as the need for a holistic approach whereby it's not only the habitat of the animals, but also the needs of the people that need to be taken care of so that conservation can be achieved. And I think you pointed out the shifting Amul falcons, and it just shows how also dynamic conservation can be, where you have to keep in mind that we're not dealing with something, static landscapes and static systems. And also importantly out here for us in Northeast India is that our identity is closely tied and is closely linked to nature, and losing wildlife species and losing forests and ecosystems at the end of the day is also about losing our identity. Thank you so much for that insightful talk that you gave us. With that, we end this session where panelists share what they have to say on conservation. But if any of the panelists have anything more to add to what has already been discussed, please do. If no one has anything more to add, we can move on to the question and answer round from the audience. I think we have a few questions. So our first question is from Kavya Ramji. And the question is, what if the future generations start cutting the forests that we have conserved? Would anyone like to take that question up?
Can I just add that it's nice to have this being Children's Day. It's nice to have somebody from 8th standard ask a question and an important one. So let me just say a couple of things. So the thing is that if we don't conserve our forests today, then children of tomorrow, the youth who are going to be the leaders of tomorrow, don't have the option of conserving or cutting down the forests. And they don't have the option of seeing species like gibbons, seeing species like tigers or elephants or rhinos or hornbills. And that is not something that we can deprive of the future generation. So something that we really need to do is make sure that children of today see, learn, and appreciate nature, but also make sure that we protect the forest just so that the future generation has that option to also conserve the forests.
Our next question is from Titir Debnath, and the question is, what is the current population density of the Western hoolock gibbon in Hima Malai Sohmat? It will also be great to know how various community conservation programs in Hima Malai Sohmat has restored and rehabilitated gibbon populations in the area. Would anyone like to? Yes, Patin.
Yes. So actually, regarding the population, as for now, we had done some kind of a survey with the help of Conservation Initiative. But the thing is that the exact population we can't say right now. But we understand that the population is about in certain part of the forest are just about 10 to 20 groups. So in one group will be around, it will be around 3 to at the most three gibbons. So by that you can understand that the population is very less. So because of this, actually, because these gibbons are scattered in the groups, one is the other side and the other is the other side. So right now we can't tell the exact population, but the thing is that they are a bit decreased than the 20 years, 30 years before. And the other thing is that I want to add here is about that you see, which I have talked earlier about the how to push the nature tourism, because nature tourism is one of the activities that we can actually, I can say it can replace to the people who cut the forest. If you talk about nature tourism, we also need some kind of the government attentions. So the government need to actually, how to concentrate in nature tourism in our areas, so that it will be quickly, it will be fast to conserve the forest. I'm very much afraid that if this could not be, could not be met in 3 to 4 years or within 5 years, by that I think the population will decrease the population of the gibbon will decrease, and the rest of the other animals as well. Thank you. Over to you, Babian.
Thank you, Patingshan. And another point here in the question was that it would be great to know how various community conservation programs in Malai Sohmat has restored and rehabilitated gibbon populations in the area. So I think I'd like to add something to that, and is that the conservation efforts that have been happening out there are still very much. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
So Ma'am Agatha Sangma needs to leave now, and I think we've just gone past what we had scheduled for this program. So I just thought I can quickly interrupt and just say a big thank you to you for being here and honoring us with your words and what you feel about conservation. And like Lanso said earlier, you are a big source of inspiration for us, and we're all there to support you. And we hope that you can keep fighting for green causes and the environment and nature, and helping the conservation of these. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Divya. Thank you, Byung, and everybody who is here right now. Again, it was a pleasure and an honor to participate and be with people who are so enthusiastic and so passionate about conservation. And it's so important, to surround yourself with people like you for me, because it gives me perspective as to why I'm really here. So thank you once again. And may this program be a success. And I'll see you all very soon. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to quickly move back to that, about how community conservation programs in Malai Sohmat has restored gibbon populations. I think that's still at the early initial phases, because it's still a relatively new conservation program, and gibbons do have a longer lifespan and generations. I mean, in order to actually know that, we need to start scientific monitoring from now itself, so that maybe 5 to 10 years down the line, then we know exactly what is being asked and how these different conservation activities are helping gibbons. There are two questions from Adrian Lingdor. One is, apart from promoting nature tourism, are there any other wildlife-centric livelihood interventions that have been taken up? And the second one is, how fragmented are forests in Malai Sohmat? So I think the first question, if anyone, Bating Shan, I guess you'd know more about that.
Sorry, Babiang, what's the question?
Apart from promoting nature tourism, are there any other wildlife-centric livelihood interventions that have been taken up?
Yes, apart from nature tourism is the animal and husbandry livestock that we try to promote right now. But actually, not much have been taken interest on this, because right now they are trying to go to because of the broomsticks, because of this betel nuts and other forest products that they really have. So, but we from the society, we try to introduce the animal and husbandry farm for the members of the cooperative societies and for the others as well. We encourage them so that they can really take this activity as one of the opportunity to actually to replace the by cutting the forest and by going to the forest and have the forest products. So we would like to replace in that way. So animal husbandry is one of the activities that we are taking a part of tourism.
If I can just add to that, so I think, definitely responsible and sustainable ecotourism is one of the options that we have in terms of how we can have win-win solutions for local livelihoods as well as conservation. But there are obviously other options as well. I think if we think about it, and this is more broadly than just Malai Sohmat specifically, I think, and this is following from what Lanso also said earlier, a lot of the places that we work in Nagaland in particular are very remote and don't have access to markets, and a lot of these societies and communities have traditionally for the longest time have relied on protein from the forests in many ways to sustain themselves. So in some of these places, I think, and like Bating Shine said, I think we do need to think about sustainable ways of providing alternative sources of protein, whether it's coming from poultry or whether it's coming from piggeries or those kind of things, which can then support this movement that we are seeing in terms of local communities wanting to conserve their forests and wanting to conserve the wildlife and the biodiversity that's in these forests, but maybe sometimes not having really the options in a realistic way to be able to do so. I think if there are other such options, similarly, the other aspect that again, I think did come up during the, when the panelists were talking about, and Lanso also brought it up, which is to do with land uses and how we plan for our land uses. And, there are certain land uses which are certainly a lot more wildlife friendly and biodiversity friendly than others. And so perhaps when we think about how we go about, planning for our lands in the future, we might tend towards those kind of land uses which can, serve the role of providing alternative livelihoods for people, but at the same time also having a biodiversity, element and a potential for conservation that just comes with them. So I think we need to start thinking about things in that kind of context. And certainly ecotourism is one aspect, but there are these other aspects that we should keep in mind.
Thank you, Varun. I do think we are a bit over time, so I think we'll wrap up the questions for the time being and move on to just the concluding remarks from Varun.
Yeah, I think since we are kind of over time, I'll keep this short, and some of it I just now said. But overall, there are a few, few threads that have run through the entire program today that I think would be valuable to kind of reiterate and emphasize again. One of which is that it is, very, very evident for everyone to see, particularly during this with the COVID-19 pandemic, about how human well-being is so closely interconnected with the well-being of our natural ecosystems and the biodiversity that they support and harbor. So I think there is clear recognition of that even in today's program. We've been talking about it, through and through. It's come up multiple times. So we need to think about how we can achieve that in the most meaningful manner. And Northeast India is special in that respect. I mean, it is, a biodiversity. It's a hotspot for biodiversity, and it has a lot of potential for conservation in the long term and potential for forests and all the different ecosystem services that the forests provide, including water security and food security and all of those things. Northeast India has that potential, and we are kind of at that, at a juncture where we could go in one direction, which is, and that path might take us down unplanned development and somewhat haphazard development, which may then lead us to losing some of this natural heritage that we have and this wealth that we have, which is so important for our own well-being and our own livelihoods. Or the other option might be to think harder about how we can plan for our landscapes and our natural resources in a manner where we can have local livelihoods being met while the conservation targets and goals are also maintained. So I think we really need to think about it from that perspective, and that is going to require participation and coming together of all the different stakeholders. We had with us today policymakers. We have with us today members of the government from the forest departments of Meghalaya and Nagaland. We have conservation NGO members, and we have people from civil society who are interested citizens and want to do something about trying to conserve our biodiversity, our forests, and our natural resources. So I think it is really important that all these different stakeholders who all have a common interest can come together in meaningful ways to make this happen. And I think one more point is to stay here and to just reiterate what we have been talking about is that Northeast India, and particularly the hill states of Northeast India, are unique in that the land holding here is very different. I think the majority of the forests are in the hands of local communities. They own the land, they manage the land, they manage the forests. And I think we have to recognize that and work hand in hand with the local communities in ways which are, like I was saying, ways which are meaningful, ways which are practical, ways which are sustainable to achieve what our goals are in terms of conservation and at the same time meeting local livelihood. So I think that is something that we really need to keep in mind. And if you're able to develop a model that can really do this, I mean, ecotourism might be one of the things that might come into it. Alternative sources of protein might be another thing that might come into it. A better conservation-friendly land use planning might be an important part of it. If we can bring all of these different pieces together to develop a model that can make community-based conservation a strong force in terms of achieving our conservation targets, then it can actually serve as an example for many other places. We have, like for example, Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, where also there are large tracts of forests which are in community hands, or for that matter, most parts of Southeast Asia as well. So I think if we are able to think innovatively and think imaginatively in terms of solutions, it could be something that could well, be replicated by others across similar contexts, and that would be something amazing. So I think with that, I feel that that's basically the kind of common aspects that we really need to keep in mind. And very briefly, one thing that I just wanted to point out is that clearly from the entire program, there's clear recognition of the fact that our traditions and our cultures are so intertwined with, with nature and recognizing nature and valuing nature. And I think somewhere when we talk about conservation and we talk about nature conservation and biodiversity conservation and all that, we sometimes tend to not perhaps think about it in explicit terms, in that there is also loss of culture. And I think when we are trying to conserve our biodiversity and our natural resources, somewhere we need to also try and preserve and conserve those aspects of culture which values these things and which is very much important for our own well-being. So I think that's basically all I will say, unless somebody else has anything else to add. Maybe we can, yeah. Byung, no other questions? Okay, all right. So I think, thank you so much, everyone, for being here, taking the time out for being here with us. And I hope you really, I hope you enjoyed watching the film. And it's been an engaging discussion thereafter. It's been great to hear all your different perspectives in terms of conservation and the way forward, and how we can try and, achieve all of the different good things that we're trying to achieve. And so I think I want to say a big thank you to everyone, all the panelists who've been here and have contributed their thoughts and views on all this. I also want to say a big thank you to all the attendees, not just the ones who are here on Zoom, but also the ones who are watching this live on YouTube and on our Instagram page. We were really overwhelmed with the kind of support and response that we received about this program when we put it up on social media. And on behalf of conservation initiatives, I must say that we're really grateful and thankful to all of you for being here, for supporting what we're doing, supporting what is a larger cause that is important for everyone and for everyone's well-being. So I think, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And I guess with that, we can perhaps close for today.